Welcome to Season 3 of the Knack for Business podcast. Over 350 episodes strong, we're here to ignite your entrepreneurial spirit with fresh insights, networking gems, and creative strategies that elevate your game.
The question for the audience: how do you talk about your business in a way that actually connects with people and drives sales? That's exactly what Helen will be diving into today. She helps entrepreneurs feel stuck, unclear, or overlooked turn their message into a magnetic story that sells. Whether it's your website, your pitch, or your book, she shows you how to speak with purpose, write with impact, and get seen by the right people. Tune in and learn how your story can become your strongest sales tool. If you struggle to explain what you do or why it matters, this is the show to listen to. Don't just sell your service. Tell your story and watch your business grow. Our guest today is Helen Snell from Helen Harwood Snell. Helen has guided entrepreneurs to understand the value of the power story to explore and explode their sales success. Through coaching or done-for-you services, she uses her expertise as a storyteller and certified communication coach to deliver your message with impact to a maximum audience reach. Up-level your online presence or take your message to the stage, or in a book partnering with Helen's ghostwriting skills, where she writes in your unique voice. Her language alchemy blends a personalized creative process with a highly credentialed communication science. Helen is an international speaker, best-selling author, and co-lead of Knack and Collaborate Network. Much of her writing is inspired by nature, human observation, and her trusted dog companions. Helen, it's an absolute pleasure having you here. What's your favorite quote?
You know what? I'm a big fan of Dr. Seuss. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not.
And you have a tagline for your business that you can share with folks.
Not every relationship leads to a sale, but every sale starts with a relationship.
You've defined something called power story. Why does every business need one?
I have a bit of controversy. I have an ongoing argument with Simon Sinek, who's written the book Start With Your Why. I actually think it needs to be start with who. You are the secret sauce to your business, and finding the story that captures your audience with that yes answer is your power story.
I always thought you were going to say from Whoville.
Horton, here's a who. I like it.
When did you realize storytelling was the quintessential piece of the puzzle for sales?
You know, that's a great part of my story, actually. I became an entrepreneur later in life. I like to joke that I come from a long line of happily employed people. Circumstances pulled me into entrepreneurship. My first foray was into network marketing. I found out pretty quickly that one of the biggest lessons was that I need to find my own brand within that larger brand. That was the whole piece that started the idea of what is my story? What is storytelling? I endeavored to put a conference together because I felt there was a lot of people that needed kind of some branding help. And so those of you in your audience who are maybe a little older and have a rock and roll background would appreciate the name. I called it Brand Aid. What struck me about that was first of its kind conference we put together in the GTA Toronto area. We had over 100 women come out to this event. Even more surprising was how each of them needed to understand the power of their story and their personal brand. And that was the thing that changed my business trajectory.
I understand you lost your voice. I understand it also created your whole business. Tell me a story.
So I have to say, we all go through these parts of our business where we become a little more refined and professional as we go along. That's part of my story that I didn't embrace for a while. I left a marriage several years ago. That was part of the reason for my becoming self-employed. In that, I lost my self-confidence. I lost my voice. And I didn't realize how long that was affecting my business, that whole experience. And the power of brand storytelling is really embracing all of the parts of who you are. And for me to be able to now share with confidence that, yes, I did have a failed marriage, I did lose my voice, that was a catalyst for me to really help other people identify the pieces of them that maybe were feeling a little vulnerable about, But vulnerability is actually a real key to storytelling and really connecting with your audience.
So when people start up their business, if you forget about your accountant, that's not so good. You get taxed to the hilt, or the CRA is going to chase you if you're here in Canada. What are the biggest mistakes businesses make when they're starting out and going, "Hi, I'm here, buy my stuff," whether it's a widget or a digit?
So talking about your business is one of the first mistakes you can make when introducing yourself to people. You actually need to talk about you. Even more important than that, you need to listen. It's really important when you're networking, when you're introducing yourself to people, that you ask questions and find out who they are, because that can give you the information you need to talk to them about what you do. If you find out more about them, maybe you're a mechanic and they're telling you they were just in a car accident or their daughter needs to buy a new car, maybe that's an in for you to start talking about your business. Or maybe it's not. That is actually, I think, a really important part of introducing ourselves. Don't start with your business. Start with their business and then with who you are. Give them an idea of your values, how you show up in the world, and that can lead into how you do your business differently than other people in your field.
It sounds like good etiquette. I'm boasting about myself. That's not a good sales strategy.
I remember hearing years ago, somebody shared with me that people will think you're a wonderful person if they've had a conversation with you and you let them talk about them.
You mentioned in the bio that you're a communications scientist. What is the science of communication all about?
So that's a really interesting part of my business. And that was part of my growth journey as well, starting with storytelling and then adding this communication science to it. The idea that you have a story and want to share it could be your why story or your origin story. The whole idea of communication science is that you would tell a story in such a way that people hear it. We all speak and listen as a result of that from a set of values that we live in. So if I'm telling you a story, I mentioned that I had a failed marriage. If I tell you that story in such a way that it is very feminist and I have a lot of dislike towards men, that's not going to align with an audience of men that I'm speaking to. You need to be able to use this science to understand who it is you're speaking to know how to tell your story that it's going to resonate with them effectively.
Very much. Telling a story and selling with a story. Are there any role models that people can look at? Is there anybody that you point them to that's out there that does it well?
It's a good question. There's probably lots of people. The first one that popped off the top of my head is Mel Robbins. She doesn't necessarily show up on social media or even show up on the stage and talk about all of her coaching programs or all of the books she's written. She talks about her daily life. And that is something that just draws the audience into her. I'm sure there are other examples as well, but that's the one that's obvious for me right now.
I thought you'd mentioned Brene Brown.
That's actually another very good one. Brene Brown has been responsible for changing a lot of the attitude in business, maybe, that you weren't supposed to have emotions. I know she's done a lot of work with government and military, letting people understand that they need to show up as themselves. That's the best way that you can work in team. That's the best way that you can, help the company move forward, help your own career, instead of stifling all of that. So that's another great example, Wayne.
So if you're in the storytelling and tailoring business, how do you help someone tailor a story? And how can you tell them that it's not resonating if you see it?
So here's a great example. The well-told story is the difference. We were talking a little bit about, how you would get your story heard. I'd love to give this example. You're presenting a new technology to a business owner and they need proof. They're not a risk taker. So you need to share a story that's going to help show your expertise, help show them that it's not a risk. You need to be able to tell a story in the way that it's going to resonate to that person. You also need to think about, again, a larger audience. Like if you are selling a tech wellness device to a group of tech investors, you're going to use a very different language and approach than you would if you were presenting that tech app at a wellness conference, because you're going to get two different sets of values from those people. You need to tell your story in a way that the audience hears it.
Do you use neurolinguistic programming in your training?
I'm aware of neuro-linguistic programming, but most of my training in communication science is from a company called Codebreaker Technologies. You may have heard of it under the acronym of BANK. That's where I got a lot of my training in values-based communication.
So if a person says, listen, I've got a story, we all have a story. Every day you're waking up in the morning, you see something that's an epiphany moment, or waking up and smelling that coffee, right? And tasting it. Where do you pick up the story and how do you shape it? You don't want to start off with the selling job. You're trying to start off with get to know me and like me and trust me. If we resonate, is where that comes down to. How do you find that story in that whole thing as opposed to a 30-minute monologue?
So, yeah, I like to encourage this. As with everything, it's a growth process. You're not going to discover what your power story is the first time you sit down and try to do it. I really like to encourage people kind of three steps to get started with storytelling. One is actually kind of start digging into that, start digging into your personal brand, start thinking of how your past experiences and your personal life align with your business. What is that story that makes you you? Start really thinking about that. Take notes, make audio recordings. I encourage people to start logging stories that happen to them on a regular basis. If you're grocery shopping or gardening and something happens, that's a story you might share with your friends. Take a little audio clip on your phone, or if you keep a journal, write that in your journal. Start grabbing the stories of the things that are happening to you on a regular basis, because you'll start to see how you approach those circumstances or relate to that particular thing is going to show you a little more about yourself. And therefore, that's something that you could show your audience as well. And so that is then the third thing. You think of childhood memories, what makes you happy, sad, angry, whatever that would be. A third thing is start sharing those little glimpses of you when you're introducing yourself at a networking event in person or in a Zoom breakout room. Start sharing a little bit about maybe something that just happened to you this past week that's humorous or that you think the group might relate to. Start sharing those bits of your stories on your social media platforms, so that it's not just a constant stream of buy my product, this is what I have on sale, this is what I do. It's more of, hey, this is who Bernie is. This is how he shows up in the world. This is what he thinks about these things, because that's actually going to draw the audience to you that you want to work with, because they're going to relate to who you are.
Do you see this being the prelude to being an influencer then? Is that not what an influencer is? Art of telling a story and then into a topic?
So an influencer to me is someone who, when I think of influencer, I think of somebody on social media who gets paid to post ridiculous content about this around the world. I think you're thinking more along the lines of being an influencer, as in maybe being a stage speaker or somebody who would be presenting to an audience through a conference or different things like that. Influence is actually... It's a good question. You got me thinking about this, Bernie. I think you want to have influence, certainly. You want to have influence in developing a relationship with people that they would trust you and they would want to believe in your referral, or they would want to believe that you could help them if you have a product or a service that could help them in their business. I think that's the influence we're looking for. We're not looking necessarily that you would be an influencer, unless, of course, that is something you are aspiring to be. If you want to be a paid stage speaker, for example, that's an influencer. You want to become Brene Brown or Tony Robbins or somebody of that nature. But that little bit of influence can still just move the needle in your business, just in that small scale. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
Something that I find very interesting is the art of telling somebody their message sucks. How do you do that? How do you turn it into them hearing it so that they can act on it instead of just have their feelings hurt?
That's a good point. I think it comes with asking questions. I'm a big believer in asking questions. And the question might be, is your website, 10 years old since you've updated it? Is your landing page converting? Are you getting the sales that you want to get? By asking those questions, they're almost giving themselves the answer that something's not working right. If they are seeing that there's a problem, then you can offer suggestions. Would you be open to hearing them about how that could help you? Nobody wants to be told that their content sucks. I'm in the middle of redoing my website right now because I think my content sucks. I think it's a matter of bringing the person to the realization that there is something that's not working. Are you introducing yourself at a networking event and not getting anybody interested in booking a call with you? Maybe you need to present it a little differently. I think that's a big key to that. Things have also changed. SEO works differently now. People want to see different content on a website than they did years ago. Again, it kind of goes back to this. People want to know who you are, not just what you do. Your website also needs to represent that. So it kind of has to do with longevity, how old the messaging is, but also how effective it is. And a person will tell you that themselves, if the messaging is working or not. They know.
You mentioned you do ghostwriting. How do you put what you're hearing back in their voice when you're the one crafting the words?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I often work in the ghostwriting process, ghostwriting presentations or speeches for people, or ghostwriting books or chapters in books if they're doing a compilation project. And what I do is, through an interview process, really get to understand who they are, who their values are. I use a technology through the bank platform where I can send a link to someone and it gives me their value codes, so I understand how they show up in the world. That really helps me to understand their voice. And then also I do a bit of research. If they've got blogs, if they've got online content that I can look at. I even did a book for a woman who sent me all of her handwritten journals, and we built her book out of that. It's really important for me that you feel that you've written the book when we're finished. And so it does take some time. People get sold on the idea of AI being a quick tool to do these things for you. It's quality in, quality out with AI. I do use AI in my business because it helps to take some of the conversations like this. If I have an interview with someone on Zoom and have that converted into some copy, I can use AI for that. But you need to dig into the personality of someone to actually be able to write in the voice that they have.
You mentioned earlier about giving speeches, doing a presentation. Part of it is the content. The other part is the effect. Someone talks in a very monotone voice. We all would have had that experience growing up during lectures and different schooling platforms where it's like, oh my gosh, there is no burning fire here. Although the content might be super rich and enriching. So do you help work with the person to deliver their talk and their appearance at the same time? Because if you go to the circus, you're looking for the razzle dazzle, right? Do you help the dazzle and razzle?
In terms of, there are some really good speech coaches out there that do help with intonation and what your background should be, and should you be standing or sitting. That's not my area of expertise. When I work with people wanting to create a speech, if I can tell from working with them that they do have that real monotone voice, I might ask, do you have a partner? Do you have someone else in your firm that might present this for you? Because of that exact reason. If it comes off as very flat, it's not going to land. And so sometimes the best thing that we could do is actually step out and realize that somebody else could do a better job. I do think most people, when they're passionate about what they're doing, can get there, but that is not my forte to coach them into that realm.
You shape the message to get them there.
For me, it's the language, and it's about connecting with the audience. I mean, certainly if I'm working with somebody, I can help them with those things, but I don't sell myself off as a speaking coach professional.
That could be different.
I can put that as one of my subtitles.
How do you help someone get past stage fright to explore their hidden passion when they feel embarrassed, the imposter syndrome? How do you get people to put a smile on people's beach, to actually just telling their story in a way that's natural and fluid and fun? They care.
I struggled with imposter syndrome for a while. I probably still have days where it pops back up. I think all of us can feel that at some point. Those people are all really professional, and I'm just trying to figure my way out. Most important part of gaining confidence is owning your story. And so that can really be helped by you journaling on a regular basis or having interviews with someone, like me, to help you dig that out. Once you own that, you're more willing to say, this is actually exciting stuff. This has got me on fire. I want to go and start a charity or do whatever it might be. That's the thing that's going to give the burning desire to someone to go and speak from stage. But I would also recommend to not jump for the big ticket. Offer yourself, if you're in a networking group, maybe you do a 10-minute presentation in a Zoom room to 20 or 30 people. Start small, getting that confidence and getting that feedback. I'm actually a member of a group. Your audience may want to check this out. It's called Speakers Speak. And they invite all sorts of speakers to come into a live platform every Wednesday. You can become a speaker. You can become a host of the event. All sorts of ways for you to get involved and get feedback. It's a great program for people to start to test their ability and learn from other speakers as well.
I would have thought improv would have been another good space to do it too. Keeps you agile on your feet and you get instant feedback.
Yes. I haven't tried that one. I'd love to do improv.
I'm interested. Being around consulting and coaching, sometimes I find people pick up the strangest things. Yes, I did say that, but man, did you take it out of context. Do you have a train wreck story that, without mentioning names, could entertain and amuse us?
I can't really think of one, Wayne, because I don't do just a one-off conversation with someone and then decide what their messaging is going to be. It's a pretty in-depth interview process. I certainly have mistaken things people have said before and taken things out of context. Even in some of my discovery calls, people could come off with a certain aura, and then I may say, hey, I could recommend that you say this in your presentation. They may come back to me and be like, well, that's not really what I'm like. I can't really think of a horror story, but sometimes it takes a few cracks to get into somebody's story properly.
I've had some people, even doing the podcast, we've had some guests like, what do I say? We've just spent 45 minutes chatting about their business back and forth. And I'm looking at them going, you have a problem with the podcast? Why? They're not sure what to say. And I'm looking at him going, we just spent 45 minutes chatting. If I had turned on the mic and did the recording, there we go. We just had a podcast. How do you encourage someone to say, listen, you have a story? How do you tease it out of them?
So again, the interview process that I use, I ask all sorts of random questions that will just maybe start you down a path. It could be, tell me something that you remember from your childhood. And that might lead to, tell me why you started your business, or tell me what you did before you started the business that you have now. There's all sorts of things that people don't realize are part of what makes them who they are until you actually bring it out in front of them, right? And so that's why I really encourage people to start thinking of those things on their own. If you get flipped off driving in traffic, is your response to be angry, or do you laugh? That's going to tell you more about who you are and how you show up in the world, right? The more you can dig into those things on your own to think about what brings out emotion in you is going to tell you more of who you are. Through the interview process I do for intake with clients, draws things from different parts of them into one. Suddenly, I've had a lot of people have these aha moments like, oh my goodness, is that how people see me? Or I never realized that I brought that into my business and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. So that's really a fun part of my work, is when people put all of those pieces together and realize how it is that they show up and why they actually thrive in the way that they are. we often operate and don't even understand why until we actually sit down and have a good look at it.
Showing a product as a storytelling, developing service. And I'm actually hearing coaching. I can see the client getting a real lift, not only because their messaging's better, but they have clarity themselves of what they do. Would you say that you actually bring some coaching to the table?
Yeah, I often thought of that, Wayne. Should I call myself a coach? I call myself a communication coach because I'm certified as a communication coach. But I do think there is an implicit part of coaching that comes along with, to get your messaging on point. There's a certain amount of coaching to get people to become confident in what that message is. So I think I might be like a coach in disguise.
In the next 5 years or so, where do you see storytelling coming around? What attributes? I mean, storytelling is always going to be around, whether it's a campfire or you're in school or you're doing a presentation or you're public speaking. But do you see any trends, any aspects that are going to be moving around in the next 5 years or so that people should be aware of?
Yeah, I do think even from a corporate level, I deal with entrepreneurs. I do some corporate work as well, but most of my work is with entrepreneurs. I think even at a corporate level, we're starting to see storytelling as a brand message with corporations. People don't want to just buy XYZ, they want to buy a feeling. And I think we're going to see more and more storytelling, story branding, if you will. I think it's going to become a lot more evident that you're not buying a product anymore, you're buying a feeling. And I mean, that's always been good marketing anyways. We buy on emotion. Do you think there's going to be a lot more tapping into that at a corporate level, at an entrepreneurship level? And I think there's going to be a lot more. You mentioned Brene Brown earlier. I think there's going to be a lot more leadership from people like her that are actually going to encourage people to be true, be authentic, be themselves, show up in the world and help the world become a better place instead of living these lives where we think we need to put on a mask to go to our jobs or even with our partners, whatever that may be. I think authenticity and storytelling are going to become a lot more common that way.
I have always been a storyteller, but I'm noticing that people's attention spans have gotten so narrow that you have 45 seconds. It's hard to start a story, tell a story, wind up a story, maybe even be in a story when they only give you 45 seconds. What do we do to get around people's impatience?
That's what they call a 7-second scroll on social media. There's got to be some kind of impact. If you're talking about something in person, if you've got 45 seconds to introduce yourself at a networking event, try to say something different. In that 45 seconds, maybe talk about something that just happened to you this week. Like, I whacked myself with a hammer on my hand the other day. You could say, hey, I'd shake your hand, but I've got this big bad bruise. You'll have to ask me about it. This is what I do. Something that's going to just get people to all of a sudden be like, hey, that didn't start with my name is, this is who I help. 45 seconds is actually quite a bit of time if you use it well. Try to add a little story into your introduction that makes you a little different than everyone else's.
Thank you, Helen.
If folks want to reach you, how do they get a hold of you? Who's your target audience? And what's the reach? Like, how far do you want to go out? Because, this podcast goes wide and far. And who's the best client for you?
I work all over the United States and Canada. I have not had any clients abroad, but I'm open to business in other parts of the world as well. My target audience is someone who's already had a level of success in business. It's very hard to incorporate storytelling and all of the work that I do with somebody who's on a really tight budget because they just started their business. So I find that most of my clientele they're entrepreneurs, they've been out there in the world, and they know they need to do something to level up. They want to speak from stage. They want to write a book. They need to elevate their messaging so that they're reaching more people. That's where I can come in and say, look at what we've already been doing. This is how we can repackage that and move forward. I work with both men and women in all sorts of different industries. I do find a lot of my clients tend to be in the wellness field, but I'm not sure why that is for whatever reason. Maybe because my alignment with wellness, health, and happiness aligns with theirs. People can reach me on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn profile is Helen Harwood Snell Storyteller. It's not hardwood with a D in the middle. You can book a discovery call with me, talkwithhelen.com. You can email me the old-fashioned way, hhswrites@gmail.com, or you can find my website, which is helenharwoodsnell.com.
Helen Snell, I want to say thank you so much for your time. Wayne Pratt, my co-host, and you, the Knack for Business listeners. If you need to have a story told, need to shape your story, Helen's the lady to reach out to. She can help craft that message, bring up the best in the story, and keep it at the right length and shape for your audience.
To reach the podcast hosts, email them at info@creativeinsight.com or by the website creativeinsight.com, spelled KREATIVINSIGH.com. To reach Wayne at his email, wayne@motivateyou.ca, that is MOTIVE, the numeral 8 and the letter U.ca, or his website, motivateyou.ca. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or format. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people. Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert. Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster, where Bernie is a co-host. Jovan Strika from @Hive, a co-working space that is more than just a space. Then Melanie Weber, Bernie's invaluable business partner, and Wayne Pratt from Motive 8U Inc., who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. Disclaimer. Please note that the Knack for Business podcast episodes are meant solely for educational and general informational purposes. The information and opinions contained within are not intended to be professional advice on any subject matter. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by the participants are their own personal beliefs and do not represent the views of the podcast hosts or any affiliated organizations. It is important to note that this podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area who possess knowledge of your unique situation. The hosts of the podcast, along with any participants or affiliated groups, do not take responsibility for any actions taken or not taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to undertaking any actions or making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.